to the committee hearing this morning. I'm joined today by Marquise Harris Dawson, so we do have a quorum, but we anticipate that Ms. Martinez will arrive shortly. So why don't we at least begin? You want to quickly run through the agenda? I think I want to start off with public comment, and guys, excuse me, I'm a little nasally, so don't get too close. I'm going to cough over the mic. So go right ahead.
Thank you, sir. Item number 1, Ethics Commission communication and City Attorney report and ordinance relative to the Public Matching Fund program. Item number 2, motion and Ethics Commission communication regarding prohibiting restricted developers and non-individuals from contributing and fundraising to city elected officials and candidates for city offices and restrictions concerning behested payments. Item number 3, City Attorney report and ordinance relative to amending the municipal code to make technical amendments to the reporting schedule for city candidates, committees, and office holders. Item number 4, City Attorney report and ordinance relative to amending the municipal code to allow contracting forms to be submitted electronically. Item number 5, motion relative to pursuing an ordinance that requires any businesses spending money in local elections to certify the businesses are not influenced by foreign entities. Item number 6, resolution and CLA report regarding HR 530. Item number 7, resolution and CLA report regarding support for legislation or administrative actions to remove the pedestrian bridge over the I-101 freeway at Killen Street and Encino Avenue. Item number 8, resolution and CLA report regarding AB 479. Item number 9, resolution regarding the opposition to any legislation and or administrative action that would allow unlicensed use of the 6 gigahertz band without including strong protections for incumbent licenses, service operating in this spectrum, and authorizing the city attorney with the assistance of ITA to file comments consistent with the city's position. Item number 10, resolution and CLA report regarding additional census funding proposed by the governor's fiscal year 1920 budget. Item number 11, motion relative to negotiating an agreement with the County of Los Angeles to accept funds for the city to engage in Census 2020 outreach and education efforts. And item number 12, resolution and CLA report regarding AB 857.
Okay, so why don't we start off with public comment? I have a technical difficulty. Well, look, I know Mr. Previn signed up, so if you're, is he not here? Okay, Mr. Previn, as I'm getting my computer up, we'll have you come up, and I have to trust you to speak on the items, and you'll have a couple of minutes, so go ahead, sir.
Okay, sir. Appreciate that, and good morning. It's nice and early today. We have a 5-minute CIS on 12-1269 S5. Is that being denied, or are you going to give us the 5?
Mr. Previn, just go on and let me get this.
Just give me the yes or no, sir.
Mr. Previn, okay, I'm running this meeting, not you.
No, I understand.
You're here to speak
Fair
on
enough.
issues.
Okay,
speak on your issues.
Fair enough, sir. Let's try to stay nice. There's a lot of important people here this morning.
There's always
I know.
that's
right. We're talking about ethics, and I know it's an area where you've taken a great interest, and so is the Ethics Commission. We've got the campaign contribution piece, and we've got the behested payment piece. Now, David Rue's been doing a diligent job of calling for an illegal ban, which the Ethics Commission has repackaged as a non-individual situation where, if you're an LLC, because as Mitch O'Farrell will remind, and we all remember, people get confused and they overgive, and then O'Farrell has to pay $15,000 penalties, but nobody reports it. So those kinds of things we're trying to eliminate. But sir, and I appreciate what you're doing by lowering from 5,000 to 1,000 the behested limitations. This is a refresh your memory. KPCC did a big report. $69 million has been kind of gathered around and sprinkled around on behalf of the mayor. Galpern only got 150, but the city attorney had $9 million. And that brings me to my next point, sir. The city attorney we're leaning heavily on Renee Stadell and Mike Fuhr on some of these judgments, and they got the Serena Oberstein thing dead wrong. They got the referral fees from attorneys who are prosecuting, dealing with cases that the city's a party in, wrong. And I'm just worried that he's not doing the diligence, and we should get some real civilian oversight on this. Now, one thing I'll just ask as I go is Arnie Berghoff and his wife, Linda Berghoff, and Mr. Knabe, Matt Knabe, and his wife, Brianna Knabe, let's ban wives or husbands of lobbyists from giving. That's an easy, low-hanging fruit. Linda Berghoff comes through with a little wagon full of contributions while you're trying to slap down a guy who's in an LLC. I think we should make it very clear that that's not acceptable. Thank you,
Thank you. Barry, Levine, you want to come up now?
Hello, council members. My name is Barry Levine. I'm a board member of the South Robertson Neighborhoods Council, and I love LA. Today, we have an opportunity to correct a problem of influence of big money in political campaigns. I've spent 45 years photographing and documenting political contributions to campaigns, and I've seen the corruption of the political process from it. And today you have the opportunity to step up and make a change in that process, and I hope you don't shirk your responsibility. $11,400 as a base would be a good start, and on item 2 I will speak later. Thank you.
No. Go now. We're going to try to take everybody while we can, because I don't know what kind of time we're going to be on. So take your extra minute to speak on your other items.
Okay. Item number 2, banning restricted developers and non-human entities from making political contributions is a great idea whose time has come, and it will clean up the swamp, to quote a Republican president. But I think it's a necessary step and a good step, and I hope that the two of you gentlemen will not shirk that responsibility and look beyond your own personal interests as elected officials and think about the greater good for the city of Los Angeles and the country as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you. Michelle Sutter. Michelle, please come forward. And then Wayne Williams will be after. Yes, ma'am.
Good morning, Council President and Councilmember Harris Dawson. It was nice to see you last night, Council President, and the Los Angeles County Democratic Party did endorse and support in the full body item 190046. We didn't have time to consider the other 2 that I'm here to speak about, which is the Bonin Amendment and also the ban on foreign-influenced corporate money. To echo what Barry said, this is an opportunity at a moment when Angelenos are concerned about how business is done in our city government. These measures will not only address that perception, but they will also change the reality. And I urge you to adopt all 3 of these. If I may take a moment to speak about the ban on foreign-influenced corporations, which I don't think many of my friends will be addressing this morning. At these thresholds so far in the Bonin measure, it would be 5% single stock ownership, 20% aggregate. At those thresholds, our study has found that about 1 in 11 of the Fortune 500 companies would be prohibited from contributing to LA municipal elections. The Massachusetts state legislature has introduced this measure at lower thresholds, and as U.S. Code 52 says, no foreign money should be in our elections. I think it's worth mentioning that they have gone 1% single stock, 5% aggregate, and the study that they conducted showed that 49% of the corporations that were contributing to Massachusetts elections would be prohibited, and I ask us to consider lowering that threshold as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, and it's good to see you again. Okay, so if I could get Carolina Goodman and then David Burke after Mr. Williams. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm here with representing the California Clean Money Campaign. I want to acknowledge that the staff of the Ethics Commission has done an exceptional job looking into all of the details of these issues very, very carefully, and has really put forward for you a package for items 1 to that really is what needs to move forward for the City of Los Angeles at this very critical time. The city has been under a lot of pressure, and this is the solution. This is the moment. So I'm knowing clearly that when it leaves this room, the form that it's in, that it will move forward. And I look forward to that opportunity. We need to pass the Bonin Amendment to lower the aggregate threshold so that candidates can qualify under the same number of minimum contributions that existed in the original program. A multi-decade study found that all 5 state legislators with public financing have a higher representation of women than the national average, and the Clean Money Campaign study showed a severe impact if the Bonin motion is not adopted. I'm going to jump ahead to item 2 and let you know that we support the proposed ban on both developers and non-individuals. We need to ban developers, contractors, and lobbyists from fundraising and bundling, and we support the ban on the behested payments to lower the disclosure threshold to $1,000. I thank you for your time. I look forward to your positive vote and to move the entire package forward. Thank you.
Thank you for coming down. So let's get the rest of our, and if I could get Jane Cook to just identify yourself and go on.
Good morning. I'm Carolina Goodman with the League of Women Voters. My colleague Wayne Williams mentioned the multi-decade study about public financing in state legislatures that ended up with a higher national average of representation for women. That's not true for our LA Matching Funds program. Why is that? Why do we have only 2 out of 15 council members who are women? Could it be that the LA program makes it too difficult to qualify for matching funds? With the aggregate threshold lowered to $11,400 for council elections, ethics projections show that the trust fund will be viable through 2030, leaving a balance of over $5.6 million. You can now comfortably support Councilmember Bonin's amendment. With respect to the amended language about the debate requirement, the League of Women Voters was disappointed that the ordinance did not specify that debates in town halls would be moderated by nonpartisan third parties, and hope that it can be addressed in the future. With respect to bans and behested payments, contribution bans and behested payments, the League of Women Voters supports the proposed contribution ban on both developers and non-individuals. We want to remind you that in 2013, 77% of Los Angeles voters passed a resolution against the influence of corporate money in politics. It's also very important to address the problem of fundraising and bundling. Behested payments is another way that special interest influences elected officials by donating to their pet nonprofits. Ethics staff has found that over half of behested payments, $26 million over the past 5 years, was donated by businesses having business in front of City Hall.
Thank you. So if I could get the next speakers, please come up. And when I call you, just kind of get in the line so I get a gauge how many people I have left. So do I have Jane Hirsch too? Okay, you can identify yourself, but we have to get into the discussion, guys. So if I call you, it saves time if you come up and get in line. And Ian can come up. I'm still looking for David Burke. Okay.
I'm David Burke, representing Citizens Take Action, a nonprofit based here in Los Angeles. The suite of reforms considered by this committee today are really about ensuring that the City Council works to represent we the people, not we the special interests. And in that interest, I want to speak in favor of the ban on contributions from non-individuals. One thing that Congress, state legislatures, and even the Supreme Court has recognized for the better part of this century is that artificial entities like corporations and unions pose a unique threat to the political process because of their unique ability to aggregate wealth. And the Supreme Court has held time and time again that prohibiting contributions from corporations and unions is done so in the interest of preventing corruption and the appearance of corruption. So we strongly urge you to follow suit and support a ban on those contributions. Furthermore, given the affordable housing issues in Los Angeles and the unique history of developers accounting for a significant portion of administrative fines related to campaign finance law, we believe that a ban on contributions by developers and related individuals also furthers anti-corruption interests. Furthermore, in order to ensure that such restrictions cannot easily be circumvented, restrictions on fundraising and bundling to avoid the circumvention of prohibitions on contributions are necessary as well. Lastly, I'd like to speak in favor of the ban on behested payments so that council members cannot get around contribution limits, and in favor of lowering the matching funds threshold, which is really about access to ensure that individuals can participate in the political process and receive matching funds, even if they may not come from a background where they're surrounded by potentially wealthy donors. Thank you for your support.
Thank you. So, next, and identify yourself, please.
I'm Jane Cook from CD 13. Well, you're all smart people who read. You know all about these issues, so do we. Lowering campaign matching funds threshold will enable more sectors of society to participate in governing it. Vote for the Bonin Amendment. As to the other one, we all know about Citizens United. Allowing non-persons to contribute to city campaigns vitiates democracy. This is California. We don't do things that way here. Vote for banning non-individuals from campaigns. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so again, I'm looking for Jane Cook, Jill Stewart, Ja, Kiana, Laurice, Michael, Rob, Quan, Bradley. Come on, if you want to speak, come on, guys, because I've got to get into the staff report. Yes, sir, identify yourself.
Thank you. Bradley Hertz of the Sutton Law Firm on behalf of our client, the Los Angeles Lobbyist Association, on number 2, and we're here to focus on the behested payments ban. We think it's a classic case of overregulation. The LA City Ethics Commission, for whom we have a tremendous amount of respect, we think is overreaching here, going beyond what Councilmember Ryu had proposed, and we think it's a case of throwing out the baby with the bathwater. There is a huge amount of corporate goodwill, folks who are making contributions at the good faith request of public officials. We're talking about Disney and the Dodgers and the Clippers and the Bloomberg Foundation, and they should not be disallowed from being asked to contribute, whether it's a toy drive or a turkey drive. We know there are some exceptions, but we think those are few and far between, and we really think this is a solution in search of a problem. We think regulation or disclosure takes care of the situation. We don't mind reducing the disclosure threshold, but a ban really is not in the best public interest. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, identify yourself, please. Ms. Stewart.
Jill Stewart, Executive Director, Coalition to Preserve LA. Thank you very much. We're really happy to see you considering this morning, and I want to talk a little bit about why the Ethics Commission got a standing O some weeks ago for putting forth these ideas. This is a very, very big deal for not just the 6,000 people who belong to Coalition to Preserve LA, but the hundreds of neighborhood groups and leaders we deal with every month on the phone and through email. The excitement level about passing items 1 and 2 and ending, behesting, and all of the other things that come under these rubrics is spreading through the city. And one of the big reasons why, and we saw it at the Ethics Commission, they made it very clear, and we did too as an audience, and that is that we want to see diversity of thought on the Los Angeles City Council in a bigger way. We are not thrilled at all with unanimous votes. We'd like to see more open debate. We'd like to see more split votes of an honest discussion of honest things where people actually get to disagree in public. I think of back to the days of Laura Chick and Cindy Misakowski and Joel Wax and some of the great leaders of great debates. We'd like to go back to a more healthy time where things are openly discussed. We think it's been restrained by the problems of too much developer money, behested payments, and other things that make people quieter in public, who we've elected to be open and proud and strong in public. So when the Ethics Commission passed these things, this was in all of our hearts and minds, and that's why they got the standing O. And we know that you folks are completely capable of leading and are good as leaders on many occasions, but too often you unanimously agree. Too often you have developer money coming in, and we need to clean it up. We don't want to be the next Chicago. We don't want to see the FBI here next year, and we hope that you approve these items. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And before the next speaker, Mr. Harris Dawson, Mr. Clerk, I think we can move forward on items 6 through 10 and 12. We'll adopt the CLA report and resolutions. And on item 11, we'll adopt the motion. So without objection, that'll be deemed approved. Okay? Yes, ma'am. Please identify yourself.
Good morning. My name's Larisse Summers, and I'm with the League of Women Voters.
Gotcha.
I'm here to urge you to pass Councilmember Bonin's motion to lower the aggregate threshold. The money's there to support these lower thresholds, but LA's current threshold is nearly twice that of any other municipality. Last year, a study of the 10 most populous cities found that LA was the worst in representation of women in local offices. LA should be setting the standard for all other cities. Having an increased competition in elections is our best way to protect against corruption. So I urge you again to vote and pass Councilmember Bonin's motion, and also I'm asking that you vote to ban contributions from developers and non-individuals.
Thank you. Next, please identify yourself, sir, and welcome.
Hi, my name is Mike Arlen. I'm not going to read what I've already written to all of the members of council through the Facebook message page. What I do want to say is that I am informed, and on the basis of that believe, and I'm here today to state that I think that these are unusual times, that this is not a time to equivocate. This is a time to surrender to ethics and the greater good. I urge you to recognize that in light of news articles and other things that are very blatant and open to all of you to understand, that this is a time for you to show that you stand with the people. You will do everything possible to require ethics to be used in this chamber. And I hope that you understand the gravity of this opportunity that you're given today. I urge you to accept the ethics rules that have been sent to you and to embrace them completely and without equivocation.
Thank you. Next, please identify yourself.
Good morning. My name is Kiana Asamanfar. I'm here on behalf of California Common Cause, representing over 10,000 members in the city of LA. We believe that a government that works for the people begins with a strong campaign finance system that puts the voices of everyday people over any wealthy special interests. And the proposals here today are two huge leaps that would put everyday people first. Firstly, we'd like to support the amendments to the matching funds program, including the Bonin amendment. While $11,400 is still a considerable amount of money to raise for a qualifying threshold, those who have raised this amount will have demonstrated significant support and should be eligible to receive matching funds. Secondly, the proposal relating to non-individual and developer contributions, as well as behested payment restrictions and disclosures, are a comprehensive approach to help shut out special interest influence in the city of LA. They also bring some much needed disclosure and And most importantly, they send a strong message that our local government is not for sale. Two things that I'd like to highlight, some anti-circumvention pieces of this proposal are the fundraising and bundling. We think this is a really, really important piece that we urge council to keep and support. And secondly, we'd like to flag the behested payment restrictions and just note that the definition of developers under restricted sources should be the same as it is under the contribution restriction, just for ease of administration as well as education. Thank you.
Thank you. Rob?
Thank you. I think it's worth noting that 10 years before Donald Trump became president, Nancy Pelosi actually coined the term drain the swamp. If you don't live up to it, it's going to be used against you. We claim to lead the nation in progressive values, but our city also leads in corruption and inequality. We bulldoze rent-controlled units to build luxury lofts and wonder why housing is unaffordable. The current scandal is simply the latest installment in a troubling trilogy of developer scandals over the last few years. We saw our Ethics Commission fining a developer for the second time after he exceeded contribution limits. That developer's wife was on the Ethics Commission during that second act. Not long ago, there were no words more arresting in these halls than Seabreeze. 10 years ago, I was knocking on doors in CD5, and by far the most common response was, anyone but Jack Weiss. And that was rooted in their mistrust over Alan Kasten's contributions to his campaign, laundering money through contractors, employees, lawyers, lobbyists, and architects. We can't continue to roll through these punches to our democracy. Hopefully today's vote will rebuke that system. We need to ensure that a non-individual ban goes to voters by March 2020 so that it can take effect before the next citywide election. And on behested payments, we clearly need to lower the disclosure threshold. 2/3 of our council offices report absolutely no behested payments. Turning to the motion on the aggregate threshold, I think Councilmember Koretz put it well. He called this amendment a no-brainer, explaining, quote, I think the idea of the matching funds program as we originally set it up was a good one, but it turned out that most of the people that benefited were council members who already have the advantages in fundraising and other well-funded candidates. I think we're actually going to be bringing people in who we were actually trying to get at originally. Our system already has big hurdles. The Ethics Commission has shown there's a clear viability for the Bonin Amendment, and I think you can look to Congress to see how much a little bit of diversity goes in changing the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, welcome.
Welcome. Good morning. This is Pete White with the Los Angeles Community Action Network. So LA CAN clearly supports banning the influence of developers' money that has been a driver of gentrification, politics, and political campaigns. However, the motion still does not go far enough because money is not the only influencer in Los Angeles politics. I suggest adding bans from commissions and elected office, such as the neighborhood council system, which in downtown Los Angeles is proliferated with developers. Developers organize to shut down and disenfranchise neighborhoods attempting to lift their vision of a new downtown LA. Shutting down an effort to create a Skid Row neighborhood council, writing and hand-delivering policies that enrich their interests while banishing entire communities. One of the speakers spoke earlier of the good old days in downtown Los Angeles and in Los Angeles politics. And I find that it is very interesting in the days of the CRA that Jan Perry and Jose Huizar would literally stay in the CRA and watch votes go through, making sure that the developers and the commissioners voted in their direction. LA CAN, during that time, published a community newspaper called The Community Connection. We literally went on, it wasn't the Ethics Commission that did this, it was community that went online, watched the votes that happened at the CRA committee, and matched the votes with campaign contributions that happened before and after the votes. Why do I tell this story? Because there's a long storied history of influence, of developer influence in Los Angeles, and that has got to stop. Names like Seabreeze, there were names like the Alexandria Hotel and Ruben Islas, well before Seabreeze. This culture has got to end. Today can start a trend toward doing that. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone left that I did not call your name? If so, come on up now. And this will conclude public comment. Yes, sir. Identify yourself.
Hi, my name's Ian Jameson. regarding the corporate attorney mouthpiece who just spoke about, who just made the claim that corporations rarely use their outsized wealth to influence city governments for nefarious purposes. Developer money is the reason why we don't have rent control in LA City. Developer money is the reason why we have over 50,000 people on the streets in LA City. This is an issue that unites both working class progressives and working class Trump supporters. The country, by and large, hates the outsized influence of corporations over all our lives, and it immiserates all of us, and this ban is long overdue. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so that concludes public comment. Now, what I want to do is ask Mr. Rue, before we move into talking with the department folk, I wanted to give you an opportunity to make a statement. You can make it from where you are. You can go sit at the center table, whatever you prefer. There is room.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Mr. Chair. And good morning, Mr. Chair, members, and thank you for inviting me to speak here on this item today. I want to start by thanking you, again, Mr. Chair, for seconding this campaign finance reform motion, scheduling the item today, and for your leadership on this package of reforms aimed at restoring and rebuilding trust in City Hall. As city leaders, we must face numerous challenges: homelessness, a growing housing crisis, planning reform, and so much else. These are big issues. They require strong consensus and community buy-in. But before we can build a Los Angeles of tomorrow, we must today rebuild the foundations on which we stand. Abraham Lincoln once said, "A house divided against itself cannot stand." I would like to add, a house built on a weak foundation can't either. In any democracy, trust is that foundation. And in Los Angeles, our democracy is on life support. On average, 3 out of 4 Angelenos skip their local elections, a fact that undermines all the great work done in this building. We all know that this is not for a lack of interest. Every day in our districts, we see incredible passion and service for our fellow Angelenos, people who build up their communities and support their neighbors, not for fame or praise, but because they love our city. Passion is not lacking in the City of Angels, but trust is. Before you today is a package of recommendations that show us a way forward. They target the very issues that have eroded the public's trust and can help rebuild it, efforts that are essential to our city's democracy. I want to thank my colleagues who co-introduced this motion, the Ethics Commission, the Ethics staff, for putting their recommendations together and for taking bold steps to repairing our campaign finance laws. I trust that this committee will have a substantive discussion on these recommendations and make the changes necessary to make these reforms legally defensible and enforceable. I request that this committee move forward on both the motion authored by me and my colleagues, as well as the ethics recommendation, which will allow the city attorney to provide guidance on both. But let me be clear, reform can and must be made. A ban on developer donations can and must be adopted. We can debate whether developer influence in City Hall is real or imagined, but the perception of pay-to-play politics is very real among the Los Angeles voter, and it is their trust we must earn. Especially now, in a time when trust in government seems so low, and people are growing increasingly concerned that government doesn't work for them. Let Los Angeles be the city that stands for transparency and trust, and let us be the leaders who get it done. This is not the last step. This is the first. By moving on these reforms, by taking these steps to rebuild trust in city government, we allow ourselves the ability to making lasting positive changes by, for, and with the people of Los Angeles. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Rue. So I'm going to ask the ethics staff and commissioner to come forward, if you guys would. And members, if you have any questions or concerns, just, give me a nod and jump in. I want to say that some time ago, we moved on some campaign finance reform recommended by you guys, and we made some changes. And I know there was Mr. Bonin's amendment to reduce the threshold from 25 to 11. To me, it was not vetted at that time, so we sent it back to you. We reduced it from 20 to 25 so that we could at least move in a positive direction, and sent it back to you, and you vetted it, and I'm really comfortable personally with your suggestions where it relates to that. So I will be recommending that we move forward and that we send that immediately to the council. I think we've spent a lot of time, and you guys spent a lot of time on that. So my questions, or what I'd like to hear, is the developer restrictions, and most importantly, the behesting. And I have some suggestions that I'll make where it relates to that. So if you could start with that, and the other members might have some more concerns where it relates to the Bonin amendment, but at this point, my concerns where it relates to that have been satisfied. So go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Melinda Murray. I'm the president of the Los Angeles City Ethics Commission. To President Wesson, to Councilmember Martinez, to Councilmember Harris Dawson, we want to thank you for taking this opportunity to consider the reforms that we've proposed. For the last 2 years, the Los Angeles City Ethics Commission, in conjunction with our awesome staff and also stakeholders in the community, have gone to laborious lengths to go over all of these recommendations based upon the perception that in the city of Los Angeles that it is a pay-to-play system. Whether that's real or whether that's not real, that is the perception. We put forth these proposals to restore confidence from the city of Los Angeles that this is not a pay-to-play culture, and that Los Angeles is a place where everyone has a stake in the community and their voices will be heard. If there's no further discussion, or perhaps Councilperson Martinez or Councilperson Harris Dawson has any questions as far as the Bonin amendment, we did tweak that based upon the recommendations that came from the City Council. So if there are no further questions than that, we could go and ask any questions that you have as far as the behested payments, or maybe we should start with the development ban, whatever the council's pleasure is.
Well, at this point, I want to let you roll it.
Okay, I'm going to defer to our Executive Director, Heather Holt, with regards to the technicalities of the developer ban.
I would just like to echo what we have already heard from the President of the Police Commission, and particularly to thank all of the collaborative work that has been going on forward over these many months, and particularly the work of the staff. I do believe that the difficult questions have been asked, the difficult questions have been answered. There will always be some legal issues that only the courts are going to be able to decide in this very fraught area. But I think the balance has been struck on both the individual or non-corporate contributions, on the developer ban, the way it's been drafted, on the behested provisions as well. But yes, there is nothing that is perfect in this world, and we would be happy to hear any particular questions that you might have that we might not have answered.
Good morning. Sit on. Good morning. Heather Holt, the Executive Director. I'm very pleased to be joined by two of our VIPs here this morning, and I very much appreciate their coming out for this meeting. As they mentioned, we have been looking at these issues for well over a year, and it has involved a lot of detailed and thoughtful, deliberate processes that include meetings with the planning department staff, research into laws in other jurisdictions, as well as holding multiple public hearings on these issues. As a result of that study, with regard to item number 2, the Ethics Commission does recommend placing a ban on campaign contributions both from non-individuals, meaning anybody other than a human being, as well as human beings who are developers. And the recommendations define developer as someone who is an applicant or a principal on a land use entitlement process with the planning department that is discretionary. It would not involve permits through the Department of Building Safety. It would not involve permits in the planning department that are purely administrative. The recommendations would place a ban on the contributions from the date that an application is filed through 12 months after the completion of the discretionary process. And it would, as some of the public speakers have mentioned, apply to campaign contributions as well as to fundraising activity and bundling activity by developers.
You know, let me jump in and get
Yes.
back to what you said first, because this is something that I'm going to recommend that you guys, along with planning and the CAO's office, you need to develop a developer's database.
Yes.
Okay, and you need to let us know how much that's going to cost, because if it's one thing to do something, but it's important to create a mechanism where it can be enforced. So that's going to be one of the things that I will be recommending to our colleagues here, is that you guys, along with planning and the CAO, quickly analyze that and let us know what it's going to cost, and we'll get the money for that. So you can continue.
Thank you, and we would be happy to do that. Moving to the behested payments, the Ethics Commission does also recommend additional regulation there. The state for years has required elected officials to disclose behested payments when one source makes at least $5,000 in behested payments in the course of a year. And a behested payment is a payment that is made by a third party to a organization for either governmental or charitable purposes. So the Ethics Commission has recommended that the disclosure threshold be lowered from $5,000 to $1,000, and that the disclosure be provide more specificity about who the payor is by requiring elected officials to note on the disclosure form whether the payor was a restricted source or a developer, as defined in the recommendations. In addition to that, the disclosure changes, the Ethics Commission also recommends that there be a ban on elected officials soliciting behested payments from restricted sources. And for elected officials, restricted sources include lobbyists, lobbying firms, bidders, contractors, persons who have attempted to influence them in the previous 12 months, and someone who in the past 12 months has had a permit or another entitlement process pending before the elected official. In conjunction with the proposed prohibition, the Ethics Commission does recognize that there are some scenarios when the threat or perception of potential corruption is much less significant, and has carved out some exceptions for that prohibition, which would include soliciting behested payments in the face of an emergency for emergency services, when there is a grant application process that an elected official would be involved in, when the solicitation is for essentially pro bono services that would be provided to the city, And when the solicitation is made to large groups, either through mass media or to the entire audience at a gathering. So those are the three essential recommendations that have been made with regard to the behested payments, and we'd be more than happy to discuss those with you.
Okay, I'm going to just couple quick ones. I'll turn it over to the other guys. So I already indicated that you need to collaboratively get together with the other departments and come up with a developer database, and that has to be done quickly in order to properly, for lack of a better word, I'll say police this. I also think that there should be, because where it relates to a lot of the concerns that were brought up by Mr. Rue, we still have to go through, city attorney has to review this and what have you. So in my opinion, there's enough time. I would like for you to contact some of I'd like to hear directly from some of the charitable organizations. I'd like to what are their thoughts? How do they think that this will affect them? In the event that we're going to do this, which I think we're leading, I don't want to predict the future, but leaning to do that in the next few minutes, but how will this actually, they should be afforded the opportunity to give us input, because as the city attorney is putting all of this together, there may be a suggestion or recommendation that makes sense, and we should is there a difference between some of the organizations in our side of town compared to other areas? I want to know that. I think we owe that to the people that they provide services for. The other thing that I think that just makes sense to me is that you should reach out, and I don't know if it's in town hall form or whatever. I'd like to get input from treasurers of the campaigns, individuals that have to file the documents and what have you, because I do think that this is going to be a little different from them, and I'd like to get input. Maybe they can recommend ways that it's easier for them, because you don't want anybody to, just because they don't know what's going on, wind up with some infraction or what have you. So I really would like to get some input from them. So if we move this forward, and as it's being drafted or what have you, if you could get that information. And also, members, I'm going to ask that the other members of the council, they need to weigh in now. I'd love to hear the thoughts of the mayor's office, the city attorney's office, and the controller's office as well. So with that said, I'm going to have the clerk read a set of amendments that basically will detail the things that I just mentioned to you. These are things that I truly believe are common sense things. These are things that should not slow this down at all, but things I think that are just necessary, and it would make it more functional, in my opinion. So you want to read those, and then I'll open it up to the other members.
Yes, sir. Recommendations for Council File 190046, item number 2. Adopt the City Ethics Commission report and request the City Attorney, with the assistance of the City Ethics Commission, Department of City Planning, to prepare, to also include the CAO, to prepare and present a draft ordinance authorizing the City Attorney to make any technical modifications or legal corrections to the requested draft ordinance in order to further the objectives as described in the recommendation in accordance with current state case law. Recommendation number 2, request the City Attorney to prepare and present a draft ordinance as outlined in the Councilmember Rue's letter, and the initiating motion, authorize the City Attorney to make any technical modification and or legal corrections to the requested draft ordinance in order to further the objectives as described in the recommendation in the accordance with current state law. Instruct the City Ethics Commission to hold a town hall meeting and campaign treasurers to discuss the proposed developers' contributions regulations and report back the discussion within 45 days. Instruct the City Ethics Commission to hold a town hall meeting with nonprofit organizations to discuss the proposed behested payments regulation and report back on the discussion within 45 days. Instruct the City Ethics Commission, and with the assistance of the Department of City Planning and the City Administrative Officer, to report back on the implementation of a developer base, including staffing needs, funding, and timeline for implementation. Just a correction on a recommendation amending one, sir. It was City Ethics Commission requesting the City Attorney and the City Ethics Commission with the Department of Planning, not CAO.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Harris Dawson, okay, Ms. Martinez.
Chair, for accommodating my child care issue this morning. I wanted to ask a few questions. So some of the candidates are currently in the middle of fundraising cycles for the 2020 election. So would the new rules be implemented prior to the 2020 election?
For the matching funds recommendations in item 1, the thought was that they would not apply until after the 2019 elections are completed, but that both those recommendations and the recommendations in item 2 would apply during the 2020 elections.
Okay. And do any of the changes that you're currently recommending require any charter amendment?
Yes, the ban on non-individual.
I can't hear you.
I'm sorry. The ban on non-individual contributions would require a charter amendment.
And so since it does, when's the next opportunity that we can place it on a ballot before the voters?
I'm not sure when exactly the next opportunity would be, but I understand that, well, I know that there is a regular primary election that will be held in March of 2020, and that there has been conversation around that as a potential date.
March 3rd of 2020?
I'm not, I believe it's more like, well, it may be March 3rd, yeah.
Okay. And in regards to creating greater transparency, this would not eliminate independent expenditures, correct?
Correct.
So the reason I'm asking is, so wouldn't we still have an issue with the public not being able to completely be aware of who's behind these independent expenditures, particularly if they're benefiting a candidate through any mailers or advertisement? So we're going to currently still face that same transparency issue.
We still have issues with independent expenditures, but this is what we believe is a very, very strong and necessary first step.
And I have two more questions, Mr. Chair. The report knows that non-individual contributions account for almost 20% or less of the contributions in every election cycle, right? Would you say that this is the average in other major cities?
We certainly have looked at a lot of the other cities, but I'm not sure I know the different percentages.
And I'm not sure that I do either. Okay. The laws are so different from jurisdiction to jurisdiction that it might be difficult to do an apples-to-apples comparison of that type. For purposes of this review, we focused on what reality is here in Los Angeles, but there are other jurisdictions that would have much lower numbers, for example, because they prohibit contributions from non-individuals or corporations or other types of business entities.
Yeah, and I guess I'm trying to figure out whether this is an LA issue, or if other major cities are dealing with the same issue, and how does that compare to us? Because I think we need to make it very clear to our constituents and people who are interested in this issue whether this is a particular problem in Los Angeles or if other cities are facing the same issue.
I believe other cities are facing the same issue, and they just deal with it in slightly different ways.
Okay. My final question is, would these recommendations apply to LA Unified School District board members?
No, they would not. If they were to apply to the LAUSD board members, this would have to be written into the charter. Okay. If there is a charter amendment that is placed for the non-individual ban, then at the same time, that could be incorporated into the LAUSD requirements. But as of this recommendation, the changes to the CFO would not affect.
Well, if I may, Mr. Chair, I think we need to consider that. That the Commission consider making recommendations that would cover these types of activities as well. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. Did you guys want to close out with anything? Go right ahead.
I'll let Commissioner
Well,
Ward
there's enough mics for both of you to say something. So go ahead.
Okay.
Before the president closes it out, I recognize the desire to reach out further for very specific reasons. I notice you put in 45 days. My only concern is timing, and maybe our staff can help us a little bit more on that. We would like to be able to move as quickly as possible so that we don't miss any of the windows.
Look, I would want you to, if you could do it in 2 weeks, I'm trying to give you a cushion because I don't know what your staff is or what have you. And I don't want any BS. I am not slowing this down. I support it. I'm moving it. So you guys do it. If you do it in 2 weeks, you do it in 2 weeks. You got to read it. You have up till 45 days. So what I want to do today is move the bonding issue so that we can vote on it in council. You guys go out and get that information. That is important for us to have as we put the details together on this. You could do it. I'm giving you 40. Hell, you want me to say 15 days? No, that doesn't. No,
I don't
that
think
doesn't
the
make
staff would
sense.
talk to me,
No, it
sir.
doesn't make sense. So I'm giving you. You can get it done quickly. I'm trying to be sensitive to staff needs and other things that you have. So that's what I want. I want this done. I want this moved so that we can focus on other things that we need to focus on. So the moment is now. The time is now. We're going to move forward on it. We need to figure out how to make it work. We got to talk to these folks that are going to be responsible for filling out, reports and what have you. They need to be educated. We need to get their input, and we need to roll it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time and attention in this matter.
Mr. Chair, if I can trouble you to make just a quick comment and raise a concern with the urgency that I appreciate on the one hand, but it causes me great pause because as a person who just spent the last 20 years at a nonprofit that has to raise money to help poor people, I look at this and worry a lot about donors now saying, oh, well, you have a relationship with Ms. Martinez, so we're not going to give to you. And so I just worry that when there's a rush that we won't actually sit down with the leaders of not just nonprofit organizations, actually people who organize events, right? So Mr. Weston and I have a big, and Ms. Martinez has been there, we have a big Martin Luther King parade in the community. It is actually an absolutely iconic event in the city of Los Angeles. There are parades all over the city. All of these folks are engaged in the process of raising resources to make that work happen. You need time to be able to have a conversation with them. And I can just tell you, because I've been one of them, they're not sitting by their phone waiting for you to call. So it's going to take a minute to get to them, to organize a meeting, to have the conversation, and actually call the data. And so I just want to implore everybody involved in this process, do that work with diligence, do it with depth, and do it right. It is much more important to get this done right than to get it done fast.
I do just want to note for the record that a standard part of all of our policy analyses does include soliciting input from the public, and we have been soliciting input from anyone and everyone for over a year. We'll be happy to conduct these town halls and make another attempt, but we certainly always want to hear from the public, so we absolutely agree with you on that.
Let's just put an emphasis on the types of organizations that we're really concerned about. Right. And those are the ones that actually do work in the community, and so we want to hear from them. So with that said, I guess on item 2, we already read all of those. On item 3, we'll adopt the city attorney's report and draft ordinance. On item 4, adopt the city attorney report and draft ordinance. And on 5, we'll adopt the motion. I want to move Mr. Bonnet's stuff to the floor before we go on whatever little recess it is, okay? So without objection, so ordered. Thank you.
Thank
this
you.
Committee, there's no other business before this committee. Just let me check, Mr. Clerk. No other business, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, then we're adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.